The hardest prison to escape is in your own mind. For Sigma males, this rings true, especially when it comes to the concept of relationships. These enigmatic individuals value freedom above all else, seeing attachments as potential traps for their identity and independence. In a world that markets love as the ultimate goal, Sigma males defy convention by steering clear of the dating game. They're the silent rebels who avoid romantic entanglements not out of fear or disdain, but out of a relentless pursuit of something that matters to them even more: uncompromised freedom. Here's a twist for you. Did you know that single people are, on average, more likely to exercise and maintain fulfilling friendships than their coupled-up counterparts? Maybe the Sigma males are onto something. They look at romance the way a minimalist looks at clutter. Why add more if you're already content? In this exploration, we're diving into why the mysterious Sigma male often chooses to walk solo in a world obsessed with pairs, revealing the rarely discussed reasons that keep them happily unattached. Buckle up, it's going to be a brutally honest ride. Number 1, relationships as identity traps. Sigma males often view relationships as identity traps, and this perspective runs deeper than mere skepticism about commitment. For them, entering into a relationship feels like sacrificing an essential part of who they are. In many relationships, there's an unspoken expectation to merge identities, to become a we instead of an I. This might feel natural or comforting to some, but for Sigma males, it's an unwelcome imposition. They see it as the beginning of losing themselves, of having their individual identity overshadowed by the identity of the relationship. These men value their unique sense of self with an almost fierce devotion, and they fear that relationships inherently come with expectations that pressure them to conform. They dread the subtle or not so subtle push to adjust their personality, beliefs, or even daily routines to accommodate someone else's needs or perspectives. For a Sigma, these changes feel like compromises that chip away at the core of who they are. They can't stand the thought of becoming a version of themselves that's watered down just to fit someone else's idea of love or commitment. Sigmas often watch others lose parts of themselves in relationships, adopting their partner's likes and dislikes, conforming to shared routines, or gradually silencing parts of themselves to avoid conflict. They see this as a tragic cost, one they're unwilling to pay. Instead, they prioritize autonomy over companionship, even if it means facing loneliness. To them, it's better to live authentically than to risk becoming a stranger to themselves in pursuit of connection. They refuse to trade self-identity for the comforts of a relationship, seeing this as a silent erosion of the very individuality they've worked hard to cultivate. For Sigma males, self-preservation means staying free from bonds that would define or limit them. Number 2, an unapologetic prioritization of freedom over connection. For Sigma males, freedom isn't just a luxury, it's a deeply rooted need, almost like oxygen. In their world, freedom takes precedence over everything, even close relationships. This prioritization of freedom over connection isn't an impulsive or defensive stance. It's a carefully chosen path that aligns with how they view life itself. They believe that relationships, by their nature, can't coexist fully with personal freedom because every relationship requires some level of compromise. To a Sigma, these compromises feel like restrictions on their independence, like barriers that prevent them from living on their own terms. When others embrace relationships as a source of emotional security or connection, Sigma males often view them as a potential loss of control over their own lives. They're well aware that romantic commitments come with obligations and expectations, however small. Even things as simple as routine check-ins, adjusting schedules, or sharing future plans can feel intrusive to someone who values the flexibility to make decisions purely for themselves. Sigmas know that by avoiding these entanglements, they retain full command over their time, choices, and priorities, an empowerment they hold above almost everything else. This unwavering commitment to freedom doesn't mean Sigmas are incapable of caring about others. Rather, they view their autonomy as an expression of self-respect. They believe that true fulfillment comes from pursuing their goals and following their own instincts without interference. To a Sigma, being single or independent isn't a lonely place. It's the only environment where they can truly grow and explore without limitations. In relationships, they sense an inevitable erosion of this autonomy and so they choose freedom, even if it means foregoing the companionship that others so eagerly seek. To them, freedom is the foundation of their well-being, and they guard it fiercely, even when that choice goes against the grain of society's expectations. Number 3, perception of relationships as energy drains. Sigma males often see relationships as a drain on their energy, and for them this isn't a minor inconvenience, it's a major deterrent. They recognize that relationships demand constant attention, emotional support, and compromise, all of which require energy they'd rather channel elsewhere. Unlike those who find a source of renewal or inspiration in romantic relationships, Sigmas feel that these dynamics disrupt the calm and focus they rely on to pursue their goals and interests. In their view, relationships come with an expectation of maintenance, a series of ongoing emotional exchanges, gestures, and reassurances that keep the connection alive. While many people view these as natural parts of a bond, Sigmas see them as energy expenditures that don't justify the outcome. They often feel emotionally self-sufficient, so the need to continually nurture someone else's feelings, navigate misunderstandings, or provide reassurance feels more exhausting than fulfilling. Sigma males are typically selective with their mental and emotional energy, seeing it as a finite resource best invested in things that offer a tangible return, like personal growth, creative pursuits, or intellectual challenges. Relationships, on the other hand, often feel unpredictable, with highs and lows that demand an adaptability they'd rather avoid. The prospect of dealing with someone else's shifting emotions, preferences, and needs feels draining and distracting from the steady state of clarity they aim to maintain. For Sigmas, preserving their energy is essential, as it allows them to focus intensely on the things that bring them meaning and satisfaction. They view their time and mental space as valuable assets, ones that shouldn't be freely given up to meet the demands of a relationship. By sidestepping relationships altogether, they ensure that they remain in control of their energy, choosing a path that feels authentic to them without the emotional depletion that they feel inevitably accompanies romantic commitments. Number 4, seeing through idealized notions of love. Sigma males often look at the popular ideas of love with a skeptical eye, recognizing flaws that most people might overlook or choose to ignore. Society often idealizes romantic love as a kind of perfect, unbreakable bond, painting it as the ultimate source of happiness and fulfillment. To a Sigma, however, this idealization seems unrealistic and even deceptive. They see love as a complex human experience rather than a fairy tale or a solution to all of life's challenges. This perception makes them cautious about entering relationships because they don't buy into the idea of love as an unblemished or eternally blissful state. Sigmas understand that people are flawed, and they view romantic relationships through this lens. They believe that love often masks imperfections, leading people to ignore incompatibilities or underlying issues in the hopes that love alone will make everything work. Sigmas find this mindset risky and unwise, as it encourages dependency on an emotion that they believe is inherently volatile. They question the wisdom of investing deeply in something as unpredictable as romantic attachment, especially when it often leads people to overlook their own values or needs in the name of preserving a bond. Moreover, Sigmas recognize that love, as it's often portrayed, can lead to unrealistic expectations. The belief that a partner can complete you, fulfill all your emotional needs, or provide lifelong happiness is a notion they find problematic. They see it as a setup for disappointment, as no person can truly meet another's every need. Instead, Sigmas value relationships that are grounded in realism, where both people are aware of their own individuality and limitations. By distancing themselves from idealized notions of love, they maintain a more balanced, clear-headed approach to relationships. They would rather remain single than pursue a fantasy that could, in their view, only lead to disillusionment. Number 5, suspicion toward love as transactional. Sigma males often approach love with a deep suspicion, particularly when it comes to the transactional elements that can emerge in relationships. For them, the idea of love as a simple exchange of time, energy, and resources feels fundamentally flawed and even manipulative. They believe that all too often relationships become arenas of subtle bargaining, each partner expecting certain actions, behaviors, or sacrifices in exchange for affection, loyalty, or commitment. To a Sigma, this transactional nature of love contradicts the authenticity they hold dear. They don't want to feel as if their worth or commitment is measured by what they can provide in a relationship. As Sigmas value genuine connection over obligation, but they see that in many relationships, love comes with strings attached. These expectations might start small, like prioritizing a partner's needs, but they can grow into larger demands, career compromises, lifestyle changes, or adjustments in values. To a Sigma, these demands feel more like transactions than genuine expressions of love. This perception makes them wary of any relationship that suggests a give-and-take mentality, which they find constraining and contrary to their ideals of personal freedom and authenticity. Another concern is that in many romantic relationships, love can become a form of social currency, where partners score points or keep track of sacrifices made, consciously or unconsciously. Sigma males find this behavior exhausting and insincere, as it shifts love from a natural bond into a calculated exchange. They're uncomfortable with any dynamic that feels like an emotional transaction, preferring relationships where both people are with each other out of a mutual desire, not obligation or expectation. To avoid this, Sigmas often opt out of traditional relationships altogether. They refuse to enter bonds that, from their perspective, risk becoming conditional or transactional, as they value freedom and personal integrity above appeasing someone else's expectations. By doing so, they preserve the kind of authentic self-determination they see as vital to a fulfilling life. Number 6, aversions to performative vulnerability. Sigma males are known for their intense independence and introspective nature, and this often shapes how they handle vulnerability. In most relationships, vulnerability is seen as a key component of closeness, a way to establish trust, connect, and open up to one another. But for Sigmas, the idea of performative vulnerability feels forced and even contrived. They're uncomfortable with the idea that they're expected to share deeply personal thoughts or emotions just to meet a relationship standard. To them, vulnerability should be natural and private, not something they have to put on display to prove their commitment or depth of feeling. For a Sigma male, being vulnerable is an intensely personal experience that doesn't necessarily need to be shared with others. They are highly selective about what they reveal, even to those closest to them, because they believe that some parts of themselves are simply not meant for external validation or scrutiny. This reluctance is not a matter of emotional unavailability. Rather, it's a deep respect for their own boundaries and individuality. They don't want to dilute their internal life by making it accessible to someone else purely because it's expected in a relationship. Sigma males see the modern push for vulnerability as something that can quickly become performative, where one's private struggles or emotions are shared less out of a desire for true connection and more as a response to social or relational expectations. They resist this because they see it as compromising their inner autonomy. Sharing their inner world feels like surrendering a part of themselves. For them, there's a significant difference between being open and feeling obligated to be open. The former is a choice. The latter feels like a requirement that strips away authenticity. Ultimately, Sigma males prioritize emotional privacy as a way of preserving their core self. They believe in maintaining control over their own emotions and thoughts, not in bending to societal expectations around closeness or intimacy. By keeping this privacy intact, they feel they can remain true to themselves, fostering a stronger sense of self that doesn't rely on external validation or approval. Number 7, romantic relationships as intrusive to their worldview. Sigma males often view romantic relationships as intrusions into their carefully crafted worldview. Unlike most people who might see relationships as a natural part of life or a way to broaden their perspectives, Sigmas approach love with caution, aware of how easily a romantic bond can disrupt their inner balance. They spend significant time cultivating their beliefs, routines, and perspectives, forming a unique worldview that provides them with a sense of purpose and direction. To a Sigma, a relationship can feel like an unwelcome invasion of that inner world, pushing them to adapt or change in ways they would rather avoid. In their eyes, relationships often bring with them an expectation to compromise, to bend their values or habits to accommodate another person's needs or viewpoints. Sigmas see this as a threat to the integrity of their own principles and priorities. They're wary of how even the most well-meaning partner might unintentionally impose their own views or habits, gradually shifting the Sigma's life in a direction they never intended to go. This reluctance isn't about selfishness, it's about protecting the authenticity and consistency of their own outlook. For Sigma males, relationships are often associated with a kind of mental clutter, a series of adjustments, accommodations, and shared responsibilities that feel like distractions from the clarity they've worked so hard to achieve. They fear that by opening themselves up to a romantic partnership, they'll end up compromising too much of their worldview, losing the very independence and self-awareness that define them. By avoiding relationships, Sigmas ensure that their worldview remains undiluted, untainted by external influence. They choose solitude not out of a lack of empathy or desire for connection, but as a commitment to preserving their sense of self. This fierce protection of their mental and emotional space allows them to stay focused on their own path, with no detours or distractions pulling them away from the life they're intent on creating for themselves. Number 8, independent happiness shatters the incomplete without someone myth. Sigma males defy the common belief that happiness is only complete when shared with a partner. For them, true fulfillment doesn't hinge on romantic companionship or the idea that one needs another half to be whole. They reject the notion that being single equates to being incomplete or missing out on something essential in life. Instead, Sigmas derive a strong sense of happiness from within, finding purpose, satisfaction, and contentment on their own terms. This internal source of joy is something they've carefully cultivated, and it makes them resistant to the conventional push to seek happiness in relationships. Sigma males are highly self-sufficient, often embracing solitude as an opportunity for self-reflection and growth. They view independence as a path to deep understanding of who they are, uncolored by anyone else's influence or expectations. They have built lives that they genuinely enjoy, full of personal goals, passions, and routines that provide them with lasting satisfaction. Because they've learned to find joy within, they see romantic relationships not as a necessity, but as an optional addition that must genuinely enhance their lives. Otherwise, it's simply not worth it. To a Sigma, the idea that one is incomplete without a partner feels like a myth that society uses to pressure people into relationships. They find this mindset limiting, as it suggests that true happiness can't be found alone. Sigmas are proof that personal fulfillment can be achieved solo through self-awareness, meaningful pursuits, and the freedom to live according to one's own values. Their happiness doesn't depend on external validation or emotional attachment to someone else. By shattering the incomplete without someone myth, Sigma males show that there's an entire world of satisfaction to be found in independence. They believe that real happiness comes from a life lived authentically, a life where they are entirely in control and free from any dependency on a partner. Number 9, belief that relationship dynamics erode personal power. Sigma males believe that the dynamics of relationships can erode personal power, and this belief is a significant factor in why they avoid romantic entanglements. For them, power doesn't just mean control over others. It's about maintaining control over their own lives, decisions, and actions. They see personal power as the ability to shape their own destiny without being influenced or constrained by anyone else's expectations. Relationships, in their view, often come with an invisible shift in priorities, one that makes it harder to retain that sense of self-sovereignty. When in a relationship, there's an inherent exchange of power. Whether intentional or not, partners often influence each other's decisions, routines, and even values. This dynamic, while natural for many, feels like a relinquishment of autonomy to a Sigma. They can't help but see romantic commitments as a potential dilution of their personal power because inevitably some part of their life becomes shared. Even the most well-meaning partner might unintentionally demand compromises, whether it's in how time is spent, how goals are pursued, or even in emotional needs that must be met. These small shifts to a Sigma feel like a loss of control, and over time they add up. What makes this particularly uncomfortable for Sigma males is that their personal power is directly tied to their independence. They thrive on making decisions that are entirely their own, unencumbered by the need to consider another person's desires or concerns. They feel that by entering a relationship, They risk giving up too much of this power in exchange for the stability or comfort a romantic bond may offer. This isn't about rejecting love or intimacy. It's about protecting the core of their identity and preserving the control they've worked so hard to maintain. In their eyes, remaining single is the only way to safeguard their personal power and stay true to their path. Number 10, disdain for social scripts and expectations. Sigma males have a deep disdain for social scripts and expectations, particularly those surrounding relationships. In a world where people are often guided by predetermined rules about what love should look like, how one should behave in a relationship, and what milestones are considered necessary, Sigmas reject these external pressures. They see these norms as suffocating, offering a one-size-fits-all approach to something as complex and personal as human connection. For Sigmas, life is meant to be lived authentically, not by adhering to a set of societal guidelines that feel limiting and constraining. From the early stages of dating to the expectations that follow, Sigmas notice how society constantly pushes people to fit into a mold. There's a prescribed path that most people follow: dating, falling in love, cohabiting, eventually getting married, and perhaps starting a family. But for Sigma males, this formula feels unnatural and unnecessary. They can't stand the idea of being trapped in a cycle of conventional expectations just because it's what society deems as the right thing. To them, it's a waste of their time and energy to follow these rituals if they don't align with their values or desires. Sigmas also reject the way relationships are often built on external validation, how the success of a relationship is measured by public displays of affection, social media posts, or approval from family and friends. They find this performative aspect of love shallow and alienating, as it detracts from the raw, genuine connection they value. They want their relationships to be private, real, and untouched by outside judgment. By avoiding the script society tries to impose, Sigmas preserve their independence and preserve relationships that aren't burdened by unnecessary expectations. They refuse to play roles in a narrative they didn't write themselves. For them, the only script that matters is the one they create for their own life. In the end, Sigma males choose to avoid relationships not out of a fear of love, but out of a deep commitment to preserving their autonomy, authenticity, and personal power. They reject societal norms that attempt to define what love should look like, understanding that true fulfillment comes from within, not from external validation or meeting conventional expectations. For them, relationships often feel like a trap, one that demands compromise, energy, and the erosion of individuality. They are fiercely protective of their mental and emotional space, seeing their independence as the foundation of their happiness and sense of self. By choosing solitude over romantic entanglements, Sigma males carve out lives where they can thrive on their own terms, unburdened by the constraints that come with blending their worldviews or energies with another. To them, it's not about avoiding love or connection, but about preserving the integrity of their unique path and guarding the inner peace that comes from living authentically. If you found this exploration into the Sigma male mindset intriguing and thought-provoking, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, join a community that dares to challenge societal norms, and dive deeper into understanding what it really means to live on your own terms. Stay tuned for more content that cuts through the noise, offering fresh perspectives on life, relationships, and everything in between. Subscribe now and never miss an insight that could reshape the way you see the world. I will see you in the next video.